I thought about this thing about describing myself. I begin first by saying I'm 72. I feel like that's a huge description all of its own, because actually I never thought I would get there. I am, to go and use a more English expression, I am first a theater worker. You know, someone who's worked in the theater from when he was very, very young. I am also some of those other things. I am a visiting associate professor, Dua Diddy, at Hollins University. It's an MFA playwrights program. I'm sort of in charge of the drama therapy component and also the applied theater component, and also a performance component that supports doing that type of work. I'm the director of Geese Theatre Company USA, which was a theatre company that worked in prisons for forever and ever and ever, 80 years, and also was the sort of co-creator, co-worker, creating all the early plays for Geese Theatre Company UK. And also, while I burble on about things like that, it was also a company called Transkena in Romania, in which I sort of advise and consult, and they were linked to my company. And we are doing, experiential-based work with sex offenders, with violent offenders, with domestic abusers, and so on, whatever. And I'm also working with Roma over there as well. And then, so education. Yes, I had some. So that included, the usual sort of, the university stuff, graduate degrees and all that sort of business. I was with the theater company in Geneva. We used to do versions of the Tibetan Book of the Dead on the audiences, and they were, in those days, we talked about theater for special audiences, and we didn't, what we really meant was non-traditional audiences. And in that company, which was a collective, we were doing Gurutovskian work, biomechanics, plastique, a lot of sort of Delsart stuff, and anything else that we could learn. We were working about, when we were in rehearsals, we would work about 4 hours a day just on the physical body, and then in the afternoon, long rehearsals that would go on for 5 or 6 or 7 hours. And that's really a grounding for me in a number of different things, both, the notion of that the body keeps the score. The body is the thing that tells the emotions, access into it. I'm not much into this, I should say it very quietly, I'm not much into this method business. I find method a bit boring. It's like constantly, tell me what I'm experiencing right. When, we don't have time for that. Just get out there and do it. So, yeah, I mean, an awful lot of physical work, and also a huge amount of connections with the audience. We used to go and do shows where we'd hand a belt to the audience and say, beat us. And sometimes, of course, the little buggers would actually do that. So, I don't know. I'm hoping that sort of answers the question. I'm an RDT, which is a registered drama therapist. I'm also a BCT, which is a board certified teacher. It's one of the higher levels of things. It means that I can go and advise students and all the rest of it. But what it means is that I can start things up and sort of be reasonably assured that no one's going to turn around and say, you're a fraud, stop doing that, etc.
Okay, awesome.
I'll tell you a story which gives you, so we were, in 1987, Geese Company, we went to Edinburgh for the Edinburgh Festival, and then we went on to Ireland and all the rest of it. And we were working in a theater, the Gateway Theater, which was a theater for men and women who had been incarcerated. And on the way there, one of my company members who looked after the mail said to me, oh, by the way, John, we just got this thing from the Drama Therapy Association. They want to grandparent you in. And I said, throw that out the window. So the last thing on earth I want to do is to become a therapist. I mean, seriously, I was a theater person. I did not really consider the notion of drama therapy, that seemed like, oh my God, there was something almost sort of phony about it, especially for someone who was just a theater person and didn't see himself doing more than that. So look, it's a long story, but very early on, we decided, the collective decided that, making nice plays for guys really was not the name of the game. And so I sent you a chapter. I mean, in there is really the sort of the beginning of the game. It's us seeing a family visit go wrong in a prison. And so we talked to this woman. This woman said to us, I've just come up from Florida. This is a Michigan prison. He's been transferred. She's crying. We're theater people. We're nosy. So we go to Joliet, we get a bunch of guys there, and when we start talking to them about visits. We want to go and do a nice liberal lefty, oh my God, the system, this, that, and the other. And this guy turns around to me and he says, and I can't tell you exactly what he said, but roughly said, you're an idiot. But that is not the first time that that's happened in my life. It seems to be quite common. So you see, you're a complete idiot. You don't understand anything at all, which is also fairly normal. He said, and I said, what is it I don't understand? And he said, look, you're geffing on with all of this stuff. He said, I gamble. And if I don't have money to pay that debt, I might get killed. So I phone my girlfriend, my old lady up, and I say to her, honey, you are my Aries, my Capricorn rising, with you, my stars are aligned, blah, 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 bring me a C note. And I listened to this and I said, but man, you're ripping her off. That's ridiculous. You're lying. I said, how do you get away with that? And he said, you just wear a mask. Boom, mask, boom. Right, so we ran off and we didn't run off. So we went and got some masks and we came back and we said, masks. And he said, nah, man, it's nonsense mask. You need a mask with a wall, man, keep people out. You need a mask with a fist to go and make people back off. And we're like, this guy is creating behaviorally everything that we needed to know for this slice of world in that moment that we're looking at. And this actually became the format in the future for all the work that we did. We did nothing unless we went through this very elaborate, intensive process. We talked to people on the outside, shrinks and all the rest of it, who were all confusing. And then we went back into the joint and said, look, we want to do something, for instance, about getting out or about violence or about, we did an HIV piece, it's a long time ago. So we started to go and work with these masks and set up this interactive relationship with the guys. Basically, if you remember your Grotowski, a sort of via negativa, we're going to go and be the most negative thing that you've ever heard, and we're going to go to the darkest place, and then the guys have to go and switch it and become positive, which was a game that we were playing. The guys would know it, but they would do it. So they got to go and say it. So people then started getting interested and, what is it about these masks, blah, 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 would you do a workshop? And then, then it began to go and really roll. Then sort of things started to go and happen. Oh, we were doing workshops, but always the same thing. There are things that these guys do that are different. I'll give you an example. So I was still teaching one day I was still teaching at the University of Iowa, and we're doing clown work, right? Punches, kicks, hair pulls, I didn't do that too much in case it all falls out. And so with my students, in order to get them to fall, first, they had to go and phone their local politician, then they'd phone their mothers, Mom, I'm gonna fall, I'm thinking about your mom, it'd take about 5 years to go and fall down. Now we're in the joint doing exactly the same thing. These guys aren't just falling, they're hurtling against the walls, they're ricocheting all over the place. And I'm like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? Instead of going, oh, wow, they're really great actors and this is really fabulous, I'm trying to understand what I'm seeing. And over time, we began to go and see that battered people lose that physical sensitivity to pain, which they need to lose so that they can go and survive. I mean, we haven't done enough sort of research, and the field of drama therapy hasn't done enough research on anything at all. Tell you the truth. I mean, the real truth about things, in the world of expressive therapies is that people just simply do it with Likert scales. And a Likert scale to me is, I like it or I don't like it. You know, I mean, it's just absolutely nonsense as far as I'm concerned, which is why I'm working with a scientist in Romania, and we're trying to go and set up some experiments to go and look at things. I have no idea if I answered your question. I mean, I think I gave you the sort of the slow tilt into becoming drama therapists, which we did with a lot of resistance, you know, and we did with a lot of resistance because we didn't live in those places for long periods of time. And if you're going to go and do really deep work with these guys, some of it you can do behaviorally, you know, just about, you have to go and repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. But if you're going to sort of, I don't like people going, I want to go and honor the, you know, I'm so sick of that word. But if you're going to go and really be a decent human being, and you're going to go to these dark places that these men have, if there's nobody there when you leave, you're putting them at risk. So it took us a long time to activate the more therapeutic component that drama therapy can really be. And then we did. So what did we do as drama therapists? What did you do? Oftentimes when I was brought in, or when the company was brought in, it was to get people to feel. Now look, this is a problem all over everywhere. You know, people don't like to feel. They prefer to think or to just act out of biases without realizing what's really going on. So I've got a guy, and he's a child molester, and he's molested his own child at the age of, let's say, you know, when the child was 3 or 4. And he lets his wife's partner, who's also a molester, do that. And he comes, and I get to go and work with him. And he's an enraged, angry guy who treats me with fabulous disrespect, you know, barely looks at me. What do I do? Well, somewhere or other, there's a story. You know how it is. Theater is in part about stories, not all. Tell me about this. How did you? And I know that somewhere or other when he was 8 or 9, that he was still essentially having problems peeing himself and all the rest of it. What happened when that happened? Oh, well, they put me outside. What do you mean they put you outside? Well, they made me wear a rubber diaper, and then they put me outside in the street and make me kneel down so that everybody could go and see that. And he's saying this in this incredibly sort of calm, quiet voice, but it's not a dissociative voice, but it's a voice that says, this is the only voice I can use to talk about this terrible thing. So that's the square. Are you ready, man? Are you ready to go to that place? Take a walk with me. And in a minute, I want you to see that street. Now, if you can't go there, let's use one of my dolls, and we'll just set it up there. I'll get someone to take it out. Tell me how that doll has to sit. And of course, he's seeing it, and I'm watching him. How much of this can he tolerate? And the issue is, will this allow him to finally get completely and start the process of being able to go and release some of this fundamental crap that's there? That was a group, I saw them every week for 2 or 3 years. So I wasn't concerned about doing that. But I'm crapping on, I'm sorry. Once I get going, talking is just nonsense. One more story.
Great, yeah, and I just want to say, I mean, you are really providing a great context, and I mean, making your response is fantastic. I'm really glad. Give one more story, but also please make sure to give a quick 1 minute wrap up of the kinds of places that you also worked as well too.
Oh,
later. But first, give your story that you were going to give.
Here's the story. I worked for a wonderful woman called Dr. Schwartz, and she was a clinical psychologist who had had polio, who had these wonderful service dogs and all the rest of it. She had a funny voice. And she would often use me. And one day I came back. I was in New Hampshire. We had a sort of a center there. And somebody said there's a message on the answering machine. John, you know, that voice of hers. John, you need to get out here right now. Now, out here, you have to go and realize, is Oregon, okay? It's not like, you know, let's go down the road. Now I've got a priest, and I got a couple of other guys, and I got a cannibal. So get out here and do something. It was like, you know what I mean? So when you work in this field, you know, and you're working with this incredibly intense sort of stuff, you don't know what you're going to be turning around the corner to go and do. You just don't know. And I remember going out there. It's a long story about the cannibal. By the way, this guy got out and he never, ever re-offended again. There's a long story about him. I won't tell it. Where did I work? Maximum security prisons, medium security prisons, some probation and parole, but that was sort of more later on. Internationally, I mean, I worked in Australia, for instance, with the Victoria prison system. They gave me 1,000 prison officers to go and work with for 18 months. I had 20 at a time for 3 days with the idea that, you know, I was supposed to go and get them to be just a little bit less dangerous in the work that they were doing. Sometimes I did sort of consulting. In Romania, I just finished working in Jilava, which is a very old prison. I don't, you know, so it was predominantly inside prison systems. At the heart of anybody who's doing this work is listening. To listen is the sensation for me is of being almost on a waterfall. You know, I start and I have to go, you know, where is it? And then just tumbling into it and hearing with the most intense ears so that I don't hear anything else. And when I hear, sometimes I can also see, you know, if that's a strength. I trust is the dreadful thing to say, besides the skills that I've built up over a few years, I trust somewhat my intuition, which is yet another peculiar thing. Do you remember in the old days, you used to go get your washing, you know, if you sent it out to go and be washed, and it would come in a brown paper parcel and wrapped up with string. Do you by any chance remember that? You remember that? Okay. When I take the dive to go and do the work, I sometimes used to get the sense that there was this washing there, and that if I opened it up, I couldn't go anywhere at all. I just had to accept it. I know that doesn't make an awful lot of sense, but really that's sort of the way that it worked. My weaknesses are really impulsivity, I think, sometimes too, just like the men. And also, I've been in a lot of dangerous situations, I think, over the years. And it builds up. I'm much less able to go and handle that. And in actual fact, that's why I do so little of it, and I draw much more than anything else. I'm quite burnt, I think. I'm always amazed at all the skills that everybody, that the drama therapy world has. You know, they do things with, you know, and back to front and upside down, and they do I don't do, for instance, developmental transformations. It scares the pee out of me. I won't go anywhere near it, and all the rest of it, all sorts of things which I don't. I think I have a very limited palette of stuff. I wrote a book once that is nothing more than 100 exercises set out in a scaled strategy for, you know, these are exercises for opening a session, for low intensity, high intensity, for closure. I'm quite methodical about what I do. I don't know. That's as much as I can come up with. I had a hard time with that question. as a Jew with not much sense of God, but with a very strong sense of Jew, to go and discover that it's about mitzvah, about doing the right thing. And I have only known that. I couldn't imagine, I could not direct Lady Audley's Secret. I just, hiss the villain or Cats. I just can't do that stuff because my first question is, who is the audience? To do this work when it's really occurring, when it's really working, is an incredible return. I mean, the first HIV piece that we did at a prison in Connecticut, and there were 300 men who were trying to watch us and 100 who wanted to play cards. And at the end of the show, it was complete silence. And then I just said to the guy, choose someone in the company and come and talk to them. And they did. That's what it's all about. You work with a guy and he comes in and he just goes, I hate you. I hate your existence. It just gives you that look, and you go, all right, well, this is going to be interesting. And then you say to him, wow, man, that's really good. You almost backed me into the wall. Does it get worse than that? Man, you're real, and then he goes, oh, okay, you got it. Hold on, look, let's scale this. Give me a chair, okay? I'm going to need 2 chairs. Now, the worst, sit in the chair and be the worst out of that it can be. Man, I'm going to kill you. Okay, that could be one. Okay, and what's the best? There is no one. Well, that's not bad. Okay, you know what I mean? You got to go and you stay with it. You're on it, and you're just sort of working. And if at the end of that session, I remember one time I was working with a guy. He's a very dangerous man. And finally it hit me. Nobody had ever apologized to him. And I said to him, man, this is in front of everybody. I said, look, I want to apologize to you. He said, why? I said, because nobody ever said sorry for the things that they did to you. And I want to say that to you. I'm sorry. And he just turned to me right at that moment and he said, it's all right, man. It's like, there in that moment, it couldn't be more primary. Drama therapy is very primal in a certain way. I mean, it's brilliant. There are some brilliant practitioners in the field. I am not one of them. I'm a bit more basic in a certain way. Well, I think so. And prisons, you walk into a prison and there is an electricity. There is something there. The men are hungry, but they hate things, and they have their own world. And the prison officers are part of it as well. Everybody forgets the prison officers. They go in there just to go and work with the prisoners. This is a whole institution with complex interactions that are going on. You could be doing the best work known to man or beast, and you walk out the door, and somebody could go and destroy it simply by saying what a bunch of garbage that is. Just like that. We need to always focus on the entire institution. The old truism, we all know where our library is, but we have no idea where our prisons are. Most of the early work that I'd done in Europe, my notion of, and because of the time that it was, that relationship with the audience was critical. And I was looking for it. I worked in a foundry and, I tried to go and get things going there and blah, blah, blah. And I was teaching at the University of Iowa, and there was a wonderful woman called Miss Cunningham who ran the leisure time activities program. Leisure. The word is leisure, for God's sake. Anyway, and she had just done 12 Angry Men, the usual sort of play that gets done in prison. And now she sent out a letter saying, does anybody have a script for, 20 men? And I got in touch with her and said, look, if I come in and do a show, I'll then teach you about improvisation and you can build your own. So I had a show which I just put together called Give Me a Dollar, that was American history from Sacco and Vanzetti to Ethel Rosenberg. We brought this piece in, right? Very active, very fast, blah, 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 we get in there. lots of stories about that. And it's 6 o'clock at night, and it's 3/4 of a mile back is the state bill. You know, there's about 300 or 400 guys sitting on bleachers. You can still hear the last show. And one of my company members starts to weep, you know, just like, get me out of here. And I said, well, all right, look, I'll try. And I stood up in front of the guys and I said, look, you're all black, we're all white. So if you don't want us here, why don't you say so, right? And there's a silence. And then this guy says, nah, man, why don't you just get on and do your shit? It's like, okay, all right, that's the best invitation I've ever had for anything in my life. You know what I mean? So we did it, and we're learning continuously. And I got a bunch of young men in the company, and you know, we're doing this performance, and it's got lots of lovely angles, except every time the boys show their asses, guys are going, man, look at the ass on that boy, you know, and all the rest of it. So then the company reblocks the show. So it's like, come out, come back, come out, come back. Then we go and we do the workshop. And I remember a simple thing. I sort of said, look, I want you to imagine I got a box. I'm going to take the front part of the box away. Tell me what's inside there. Boom, you know, well, there's a zebra in there and there's somebody doing some dope. But I mean, you know, it was full imagination. It was as dense as my students, but it was a completely different universe. And that edge where I knew that I had to be on now, that I couldn't just rely on, you know, something like, look, here's the script. That made me go, okay, this is my place. This is where I want to be. And I can do something here.
Can you also share?
I had a guy I was working with. He had committed a sexual offense, but he was intransigent. He was ashamed to go and be there in group more than anything else. He wanted to go and do the work. And he decided that he could just be as rude to me as he possibly could, which, of course, I thought was quite amusing. You know, I'm always fascinated, especially if you've got some new way of being rude. And I would put my foot down periodically and say, look, that's enough. And I remember saying to him, take me through your room. Where's the front door? Where are the windows? Walk me in there. And when we walked into that room was where he showed me who he really was. So he's such a young man. I mean, he was in his late 40s, and yet here were these toys. This is so hard because I really can't give you much in the way of details. And there were guns. And he hadn't alluded to the guns before. This was the first time. He'd never used them, but they were part of what he wanted to be. We started to go and work on what I want to be, about what I really am and what those differences are. One day we started group and he walked in the door and he said, you put milk in your coffee, don't you? He hands me this giant cup of coffee and I'm going to pee for a month from just this cup. About halfway into the group, somebody says something and he goes, don't be rude to John. What is happening here? So he's crossed over. He's making the connection. I am safe. And gradually we steered him. Other people couldn't work with him. He was just rude to them. He didn't want to go and do it. He didn't like them. His emotions would just sort of flash through. But when we worked together, eventually he got out and he got free. It was just when I went into his room and he showed me his private self, There's a lot of those, a lot of those, a lot of those.
Thank you.
Right. My friend Saul Hewish, who's a brilliant theatre worker in prisons in England, and who was the artistic director of Geese Theatre Company UK for a good long while. He and a crazy architect and a couple of other people and some prisoners designed the perfect prison. And it had a crinkle crankle wall in black and white, and you could go and have programs inside it. And you guys, I'm going to presume, because you're smart, will have seen all the stuff about the Norwegian prison system and horses and all the rest of it. I mean, you know, this is treating people with not just respect, but more with creativity. You know, with this guy doesn't know that he wants to get on a horse. I frankly wouldn't be caught even snorting on a horse. Get down, they're terrifying. You know, they have big heads and they do things, they waggle around. So creating an environment in which men, women, and children who are incarcerated can begin to recover some of their past, atone, pay attention to how they got to go and do the things they do, be able to go and say to the people that they've hurt the apology that they need, even if it's not ever truly accepted, and who are then released with support. You can't release these guys, you know, well, we let them out at midnight, you know, could have let them out at 10 o'clock. Yeah, you let them out at midnight, it's the last bus, they arrive in a city, it's 2 o'clock in the goddamn morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then what? I mean, it's outrageous, the sort of cruelty. I remember to this day, we were working on creating a show in San Francisco County Jail 7, and there was a guy there. We were doing a show about survival with 18 cents in the street. This was a guy, was an old heroin addict, African-American man, very, very sweet guy. And he hadn't been able to go and say very much. And we kept saying to him, define loneliness, tell us. And he suddenly turned to us and he said, man, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and you're on a bus to Detroit. You get out the bus, it's a cold day, and the only friend you've got is a piece of paper that the wind blows onto you. Everybody froze, you know. And of course, then the real problem after that was, this man was, you know, with a long heroin habit, and his memory is shot. How do we get him to go and do that on stage, to go and remember? I mean, we were talking about with these, when we put people in prison, we only put poor people in prison. We really don't put rich people in prison, and when we do, we put them in nice federal prisons. So we put poor people in prisons. We surround them with people who are badly paid, who are often badly trained. You know, oftentimes in these, you know, private prisons, which have a terrible track record, both in this country and let me tell you, in Australia and England as well. You know, and these men endure, you know, violence and then enact violence in order to go and survive. My ideal is a sensate place where guys have to go and deal with what they've done, where they get to finally deal with what was done to them, and we set them up to go and live outside for at least 2 years. We spend the money to go and make sure that they can go and survive in the free world, you know, somewhere or another. And we don't try to go on and trip them up over, you know, you weren't wearing your little electronic tag, straight back to prison, you know, and all the rest of the nonsense that's there. What we are learning about human beings and human behavior, particularly in the world of neuropsychology and neuropsychiatry, is really extraordinary. I think there will come a time that there'll be something that will look like a metal detector, and somebody will go through that, and then there'll be a readout. Give the entire neural readout, you know, it'll all be there. And you go, okay, we'll need a drama therapist to go and do this, we'll need an occupational therapist to go and do, you know what I mean? We're not there, but I think we'll be dead. but it will happen, let me tell you. I worry enormously that drama therapists take on things that they don't really know the answers to. I'm somewhat concerned by the emphasis on trauma all the time. I think it can become a sort of a crutch. You know, that person has like drama thumb. I mean, has trauma thumb. I think that's nonsense. I think sometimes what people need, you know, is it perhaps they need an element, or they're missing something from their diet, or they're missing something from, or, you know, they don't know how to go and do something, or something that would happen if they did more school, or what the hell. So I would like to go and see drama therapists as part of comprehensive teams. I have seen this in the Dutch system, where I did a little bit of teaching, but in a Dutch prison for psychiatric folk, I saw they have a multidisciplinary team. So it's an art therapist, a music therapist, a drama therapist, and then they also have an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, and then they have a psychologist. I mean, they have teams working with folk, and they discuss what it is that the guys need. Beautiful place, still a prison, but it's a beautiful place. The guys have a fair amount of daily sort of freedom, but they really do the work. I know because I've been in there. I helped out one day and did a bunch of work with them. So I would like to go and see drama therapists who are working with the incarcerated, working with teams of people and not being on their own. I don't think that makes any sense at all. Next, drama therapy, the NADTA. There are 4 of us that are going to go and speak. So it's Linda Cook, been around for longer than me, and myself, Saul Hewish, and Mihailo Sasaman from Romania. And one of the things that is really parallel for all 4 of us is that we've all spoken at very large conferences that were not arts therapy conferences. I mean, I used to go on presented sex offender conferences at the American Corrections Association, and I've written, you know, chapters for them and all the rest of it, you know, so that young people, I don't know if young people realize that our ability to be able to go and see, understand, and then present in condensed and cogent ways what we see in the prisons to other people is a really powerful gift. I mean, it really is one that we should. So we can influence policies by enacting experiential techniques and strategies for change that you wouldn't normally see at these conferences. But to do so, we need to jump. So you're going in and you're doing drama therapy, and, you know, here comes another show and another show. I'm thinking about the wonderful work that Tofteland does doing Shakespeare Behind Bars. I mean, it's lovely stuff, and his docu is just beautiful. But, you know, where does it go to? I mean, and I think that he is involved in, you know, at state levels trying to make things, you know, and trying to go and create change. We have to put ourselves together as groups who specifically work with prisons and discuss it amongst ourselves, and then, you know, head out to the conferences, you know, and literally go to the state and say, okay, who's the Department of Corrections commissioner? And then you say, hey, look, you know, I've been doing this for an awful long time. These are things I've seen over here. You learn how to go. If you can't talk to these prison systems, you're an army of one. It's a really simple answer to that. First of all, most prisoners that I work with, like a lot of people, they don't like blah, blah therapy. They really don't. But if I say, well, a guy who's murdered somebody, and if I say to him, and he say, look, man, do me a favor, will you? Show me that. And he shows me. So, hey, so let's do it again, but this time, don't kill him. She says, I gotta kill him. I said, wait, get a chair. We'll call it the I gotta kill him chair. You understand all the rest. And so it goes. It's action. Many of these guys have lost or have never created that contemplative, you know, front main techniques for being able to engage with things that word therapy really demands. So drama therapy, art therapy, music therapy, action therapies that are smart are, I think, the logical thing to go and use with people who are, who are very, very active and who are afraid legitimately afraid of therapists and clinical psychologists. A clinical psychologist is the enemy. After all, what he tells me in group, it's a different experience. This guy tells me something dangerous. I have no choice but to go and tell the institution, got to go do it. Can't keep secrets like that. And there are some people who don't get that, that, when you hear something dangerous, you've got to do something about it. Drama therapists amongst, action therapists and experiential therapists are the ones I think that can most accurately, most sensitively, and most successfully engaged with battered people.